Hello, Richard. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning to you.
Yeah, it's actually evening here.
Oh, that's right. We're 10.5 hours difference, huh?
Yes, yes. And thank you again for your time. Mhm.
My pleasure. Yeah. What's
Yeah,
on your mind today?
I would like to start our conversation today with a famous quotation from Winnicott, where he says that let me read it actually for you. He says the basis of the capacity to be alone is a paradox. It's to be alone in the presence of the other. And he means actually the mother. And he goes on explaining that the capacity to be alone is actually damaged when the person experiences impingement from the mother, where he cannot be who he wants to be, what he calls going on being in the presence of the mother. And then this capacity is limited, and then he talks about the incapacity to be alone.
Several
So,
things come to mind when you mention that quotation, which I don't remember reading. Um, but let me just expand on my own ideas in response to it.
okay.
Uh, there's a wonderfulness about being able to be alone and be secure so that one goes at their own rhythm. They can slow down and have their own mental process, and that there is no disturbance from the outside world. That kind of aloneness can be very nurturing. I think Freud referred to it as the importance of solitude,
Mm,
of being quiet within oneself and being able to find one's own natural rhythm and thought processes. Um, Then there is the kind of alone that is being pestered by someone, being invaded by someone, that somebody else's rhythm is distracting. So the person has to pull back and be alone. But that kind of loneliness, and I changed the word from alone to a loneliness,
yes.
I think is always has a longing with it. They're longing for the other to be really present and contactful, but they haven't experienced that they are not. Uh, and so they're caught between wanting the contact and not wanting the contact. This is certainly the situation in a lot of psychological disorders, whether it be schizoid process or narcissism, and maybe even the borderlines.
Mm, mm. Yeah. And what is similar through all these organizations? I mean, the experience of loneliness.
Well, certainly when I think of it in terms of child development,
Yeah.
what you've got is the various needs of the child, those important relational needs that are not being responded to early in life according to how that child of that age manifests the need.
Mm,
So, for example, in narcissism, that the child, breaks off that relationship. They intentionally separate themselves from relying on the parent. And there's a lot of indication from Freud through much of the psychoanalytic literature and even the more modern literature on treatment of narcissism that
mm,
they have divorced themselves in the relationship.
mm,
That
mm,
creates a kind of loneliness that is unbearable. So that loneliness has to be distracted by grandiosity, by bragging, by accomplishments, by being beautiful. Right.
Yeah.
The same thing with the schizoid process, but differently. The schizoid client is afraid of invasion.
Yeah.
Um, and they've had parents that are often overprotective, over controlling, and
Mm.
so they feel missed in that process, and they engage in withdrawal, which
Mm.
winds up in being very lonely because they are not in relationship. So those are the thoughts that quickly came to my mind with your quotation.
Mm. So throughout the development, you think that the origin of those is lack of response or attunement to the needs of the child. But the way that they respond is different in each organization, in schizoid, in narcissistic, or maybe even borderline.
It might be different because of the character, the nature of the child, the
The nature of the child.
handles it differently. It is also, and this would be consistent with a lot of the literature, it's different because it occurs at different developmental ages.
Yeah.
Whereas the schizoid might have started much earlier in life. And the narcissistic client has that experience at 18 months to 3 years of age. Um,
So that there is where the pain starts, with the pain of loneliness.
but that pain is like a little grain of sand. It's not significant.
Mm.
But add another one and another and another, and now 1,000, and now 1,000,000 grains of sand, and you begin to get quite a dune. So that one of the problems I have in reading the literature on the origin of borderlines or narcissism or schizoid is that they try to pinpoint it to an age.
Mm.
Whereas I take that literature and see that age that they define as a starting point,
Yeah.
but the parents and the child interaction continues to reinforce that at
Yes.
every developmental stage, not just in infancy, but in preschool, in kindergarten age, in early school,
Mm.
in high school.
Mm.
So you're talking about a 20-year process.
Mm. And talking in TA language, we are now talking about the child ego state and the layers of it. But I wonder if it can be also introjected in the parent. You have a case in Beyond Empathy where the loneliness is actually introjected from mother and the depression that comes from the mother. I don't know if you can remember that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when you use child ego state, did you say it in the plural or in the singular?
Well, in the plural, ego
Yeah.
states.
Eric Byrne in TA and psychotherapy always talks about child ego states, not,
Yes,
although he diagrams it as one, he's
yes,
talking about many. So you can have a child ego state at what I would consider every level of trauma. It's the
yes.
child's way to try to cope with what was missing, and then they get fixated
Mm.
there. Part of that process then is in attempting to maintain relationship, they unconsciously and self-protectively identify with the thoughts, feelings, emotions, and attitudes of the significant people in their life. Mm. This is different than conscious identification, but it's a way to compensate for the failure of having their relational needs met. They then take on the unfinished business of their parents. For example, one boy with a very angry, nasty, criticizing father
Yeah.
took on that way of being once in a while, so that whenever he was confronted with something, he would fly into a rage, just like his father.
But then he has the power and the mastery over that experience.
That's right. Then afterward, he'd come to therapy and tell me just how miserable he felt for being so aggressive and nasty, until we realized it was the father in his head that was getting activated.
Yeah,
And one of the reasons he had interjected his father, as as he realized and told me, was in order to protect himself from that vicious attack.
yeah,
Right? Another client who had a depressed mother, the way she could have any real contact with her mother was when her mother would be on the couch, depressed, not able to do much, and she would go and curl up with her mother on the
mhm,
couch, seeming very lovingly. And her mother would tell her about her bad marriage and how depressed she was, and the child sympathized with the mother. Later in life, whenever that woman was disappointed by anything, she would move into that very depressive state that was also her mother's. So it's like interjection is an alien invasion of
yeah,
who the person is.
yeah. Well, thank you for these two examples. I think it clarifies the phenomena. Uh, but now let's go to the clinical practice and how it looks like then actually in the practice through. Of course, it's different with different organizations of people, whether it's a schizoid organization or narcissistic or borderline. But how
And
would,
yet, there may not be much difference. Let's,
well, I want you to explain
yeah,
about that. Yeah.
there
And
may not be. Uh,
yeah, so that how that lonely part or parts maybe are accessed in the therapy room.
First and foremost for me is my finding the client's natural rhythm and adjusting myself to their natural rhythm. One of the hallmarks of people who are lonely, particularly lonely in social settings, is that other people aren't in the same rhythm with them. And their loneliness gets continually reinforced because of the rhythmic misattunement.
Yeah,
So part of my task, no matter what those diagnostic categories are,
yeah.
is to see if I can find and put myself in tune with their own natural rhythm.
Yeah, so actually you establish a contactful relationship with them.
Then my next focus would be on the tension in their body, which is closely related to rhythm. And can I sense what muscles are tight and the message in those muscles about their anticipation of rejection or trauma or just being ignored?
Yeah,
Uh, and the next comes my focus on attunement. And I think the attunement to uh, sadness is compassion, and the attunement to fear is security making. Um, so with loneliness, I think the attunement has to be with presence, just
mhm,
being present. And sometimes that requires being silent, but continuing the eye contact or the sense of my fully being there, even if the client wanders away in their mind, that sense of being there. Then I often watch the juxtaposition that occurs when they have a history of nobody really being present, nobody really being involved. And then you, as a psychotherapist,
mm,
really show your presence and involvement. That is disconcerting. And so they'll push you away. So I pay attention to those push aways. Usually I won't comment on them right away. I'll come back 10 minutes later or at the beginning of the next session
mm,
and say, we had what I thought was a very intimate moment there. And then
mm,
you looked away and you changed the subject.
mm,
What happened just moments before?
mm,
And often then that will lead into memories
mm.
of some other rupture in relationship. So it's easier for them to anticipate that I'm going to be invasive or controlling or criticizing
Yeah.
than to experience a gentleness, a respectfulness, a caring
Mm,
response.
mm. So when you mentioned the juxtaposition, I was thinking of the schizoid process. In your book, you mentioned that they have this seeking contact and at the
Yeah.
same time wanting distance. So
Okay. The book I'm referring to, I think, is Withdrawal, Silence, and Loneliness.
exactly.
Yeah, actually, it was a quotation from Harry Gunthrope that I had
Yeah.
paraphrased, and that is that client engaging in withdrawal uh, goes into hiding out of fear of invasiveness, out of fear of the interpersonal relationship being invasive and controlling.
Yeah.
But they can't stay in hiding forever because we're relational beings. So they come out seeking. And as they come out seeking, they get terrified of what will happen, or they get more examples of a disruption in the contact that they go back inside. So there's that constant pull
Yeah.
between going inside and the other. Now, one of the things I had uh, learned from my clients is that not all withdrawal is problematic.
Mm,
Right? You blinked right there, you withdrew for a moment in order to just to refresh the moisture in your eye so that you could see. Right?
mm,
We
mm.
need sleep in order to function. That's a form of withdrawal. Right?
Yes.
In the course of my busy day, I often just sit back and close my eyes for 10 minutes so that I can be more intellectually present in the task I'm doing. So
Mhm.
there's a kind of withdrawal that moves us into a alone place
Mhm.
that is nurturing and refreshing.
Yeah.
Then there's the kind of withdrawal that leads us into a lonely place that is protective and diminishing of contact.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I've seen this many times in your interventions that you facilitate that withdrawal in the session, and then you want to accompany the person or maybe give them a chance to say something or make a change in the body or
Well, now let's go back to your quote from Winnicott that you get,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
To accompany them in their quiet place. So that quiet place becomes one of replenishment and rest and nurturing, but in the presence of a watchful, protective other, which is what I think Winnicott was hoping the mother would provide that infant.
Exactly. Yes. He actually has a term that's I find it very beautiful. He writes this with dash, going on being. This is the state of the infant or the child in that moment should be
Yeah,
going on being. It's like the
I,
natural rhythm that you were speaking about.
that's right. It's the rhythm of baby and caretaker uh, that is in harmony with the baby's ever emerging needs. And, yeah, going on being.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Richard. This
You're
conversation.
welcome. I enjoy our little chats and I look forward to the next one.
Well, I
Thank
enjoy
you.
very much. Until the next one. Yes.
Okay, have a good evening.
And have a good day.